Aston Villa have finally got their new left back, Reggeri from Atletico Madrid, and I'll be honest, this is a very, very interesting signing because it unlocks something that Aston Villa were lacking. And that is the fact that Aston Villa have just gone and signed one of the best crosses in La Liga statistically. Now, you guys can see the graphic on the screen here, which looks like crosses expected threat. Who's number one on this list? Reggeri. And another thing I think a lot of people agree with me is when they see defenders or fullbacks, let's say, with high crossing numbers, you normally think they're spamming the ball in. There's not much accuracy to his game. But Reggeri is actually a bit different in that aspect. You guys can see this graphic here, which looks at crosses success rate. Reggeri is fourth on that list. But I think it's also very important to understand the zones where Reggeri likes to operate. In terms of, we've all seen Robertson over the last couple of years in the Premier League and even for Hull City. When he crosses, he wants to run to the byline and put a cross in kind of thing, or pull it back. Reggeri is not that sort of fullback where he's going to push to the byline. You guys can see this picture on the screen here, which looks like his assist against Real Sociedad for Sorlof's goal last season. But look where Reggeri actually put the ball in. He's outside the penalty box area, whipping a ball in from a bit deeper. And those are the areas and zones that you're going to expect the Italian defender to operate in. For example, if Aston Villa do want to keep Brian Maggio for a season and not send him out alone, having a 6'4" striker with a Reggeri cross could be very, very impactful. Because Reggeri and Sorloth had a brilliant relationship over the last year in La Liga. I think Reggeri assisted him 3 times, I think it was, and had 11 shot assists for the Norwegian striker. Now, Aston Villa are not getting one of the most athletic defenders in the world because that's not really the Italians' game. But in terms of his technical ability on the ball, that's where you guys will see him shine. For example, you guys can see the graphic on the screen here, which looks at where Reggeri advanced the ball and created threat. You guys can see his carry numbers are minimal, but his passing numbers in terms of progressive passes are a lot better, and this is where he stands out in his game when he has the ball to feed. Now, so far I've mentioned in this video that Reggeri is not the most athletic of defenders, but in terms of his technical qualities, he probably shines it. And I think Aston Villa fans are going to understand this comparison where you can probably say he's very, very similar in a way to the person he's replacing in Lucas Digne. In terms of Lucas Digne was praised for his technical qualities, but is he the most athletic of defenders? The answer to that question is probably no. And you guys can see the graphic on the screen here, which looks at Reggeri's passing numbers to Lucas Digne's. And the Italian actually comes out on top in a lot of categories. For example, crosses, much better for the Italian. Passes to the final third, passes to the penalty area, forward passes all favour the new Aston Villa fullback. However, when we're looking at Digne, he does come out on top in terms of assists and expected assist numbers, which you could argue are also very, very important for an attacking fullback. Now, before we get into a bit more detail about the defensive capabilities between Reggeri and Digne, I really wanted to show you this graphic, which I found very, very interesting when obviously doing research for this video, which hopefully you guys are enjoying, so make sure you guys give it a like. But these are the areas which Reggeri and Digne completed threatening actions. And now you guys can see when it comes to threatening actions, you can argue Digne probably starts from a bit deeper in terms of carrying the ball, passing the ball. But in terms of where the actions are normally ending, in terms of their positive expected threat actions, they both operate in similar sort of zones, which is why I think Aston Villa's recruitment team and data team are probably looking at Reggeri as the perfect Digne replacement. Now, when we're comparing defensive numbers between Reggeri and Digne, one thing that stood out to me straight away was how good his defensive interception numbers were. He averages 4.4 interceptions per night, which is extremely high. Other categories that he comes out on top in are stuff like defensive duels and recoveries. Aerial duels, Digne actually comes out on top in terms of quantity. But when you're actually looking at who wins more aerial duels, is actually the Italian defender. The other thing that I really wanted to point out when comparing Digne and Reggeri was just look at fouls conceded. Digne concedes 0.65 fouls, Reggeri concedes 1.3. Now that is a slight issue in terms of conceding over 1 foul a game is not necessarily a positive, considering the fact that so far in pre-season, Aston Villa have kind of struggled at defending set pieces. Obviously, in terms of their set piece team, they're going through a bit of a transition in terms of they lost their set piece coach to Chelsea this summer. Let's see how Aston Villa and Unai Emery kind of work on Ruggeri's game in terms of that aspect. They don't want to be giving silly fouls away, but overall, I think this is a really smart piece of business when you're looking at the data between Reggeri and Digne, the man that he's replacing. And I can understand why Aston Villa went for him. I think this could be a potentially exciting signing for Aston Villa. Let me know down below what you think on this signing. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like. subscribe to the channel.